The reason that we are doing this one today is because we want to give Jim Jordan our back and just let him know that patriots around the country stand with him.
You're so right, Betsy. We just couldn't go on without having a word of support, because he's one of the great heroes. He is a true Second American Revolution hero. He is at the forefront. He is leading the charge. He is holding the banner, the flag that Betsy sewed, as a matter of fact. And what is happening now is, I'm so glad that he has such a long history of being a wrestler, because he's going to have to wrestle with these alligators, and that's what he's doing now. And they've turned on him, and they're using Perkins Coie, one of the worst opposition research groups, political opposition research groups, which basically means that they are illegal propagandists who create lies and attack people to destroy them politically and otherwise. Perkins Coie, we know, of course, was paid millions of dollars by Podesta and the DNC, Democratic National Committee, and by Hillary and the Victory Fund to create the Trump dossier using foreign agents, which is, of course, horrifyingly illegal. One of the worst things you can do, according to the Constitution, is to mess with an election, and they worse than messed with an election. So Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, he might as well just name his name should just be Mark the Liar, okay? Because that's all he does. He was questioned before Congress and said he didn't know anything about any of this. He didn't know anything about Fusion GPS. He didn't know anything about a dossier. Didn't know who paid for it. Nothing. 1 week later, he says, yes, we paid for it. And it's normal. It's political. It's just simply opposition research. It's no big deal. We paid for it. I'm done. Don't look here anymore. We're moving on because I'm a lawyer. Perkins Coie has represented Obama. Perkins Coie has represented most of the criminals in Washington, D.C., because they're a law firm that is also a Fusion GPS opposition group, you see. And so what is really going on here is a political attack against Jim Jordan, because it has already been said that he is the likely candidate to push Paul Ryan out of office, even perhaps very quickly, soon, now. And that they can't have happen, because Paul Ryan is still trying to, as a Republican in name only, keep up his leadership. And the part I always love about him, he's honest, he shows his emotions, he shows when he is upset. He actually is one of the few honest people. Devin Nunes is another one, but he's a little bit more cool, calm, and collected. But Jim Jordan is a fighter, a Freedom Caucus, and he is a perfect person to lead a MAGA House of Representatives, so that he can stand up and say to a Maxine Waters that even what she has said on the floor of the House of Representatives is illegal. They are threats, they are unethical, and she should have been censored just from what she said there publicly. But the point is there's no leadership of Republicans. Paul Ryan is a complete joke, and the other people who stand in line for this, McCarthy and others, they're just going to keep up the same thing. We need something new. So we need one of the fighters, and we don't need the fighter Trey Gowdy, because he's sometimes on our side and sometimes he's not.
No, he's a yapper. You know, he just all yap and no bite.
Yeah. He's getting upset, though, now, because he's being made into a fool by the way that he's being treated. It's just absolute insulting the way the Department of Justice and the FBI completely ignore congressional oversight power. And I hope that they impeach Rod Rosenstein, one of the most smug, filled with pride and gross, unbecoming hubris like I've never seen. I can't believe anybody gave the answers that he gave last time he testified. But anyway, so Jim Jordan last time, he went after Rosenstein. He didn't let Rosenstein speak. Rosenstein tried to argue. He asked Rosenstein some questions, but when Rosenstein immediately began to defer to stupidity, like he did throughout the entire rest of the testimony, Jim Jordan would just talk over him. And of course, the chairman said that was his right to do so. It was his 5 minutes. So when you have these meetings that are open door, please remember, we as the people aren't going to get to know anything, because the people asking them questions get 5 minutes. Behind closed doors, they got 13 hours with him. or continuous, and they can call them back. And they get to ask lots of questions, and then it goes on the record. And so Jim Jordan is putting people on the record, and they're subpoenaing as many as 17 more people to continue this investigation of FISA warrant abuse, all of it. The Trump spies, the supposed informants, dossier, all of those things. He's not going to let up on those things.
Well, let's be very clear about something. These closed meetings are there just to protect the criminal corrupt, because everybody knows what went on. We have all of the information. What they're trying to do is just to keep us from knowing it. I need to see all these things open, transparent, and I want to see all the information. I want everything unredacted. And we, the American people, are just sick and tired of this, and we just need to see the dirt and put them away.
When Glenn Simpson testified before the corrupt Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein took his testimony and made it public. So even behind closed doors, to the Democrats, they do what they want. To the Republicans, if they would have done that, oh my, it was like when they kicked Devin Nunes off of being the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee for ethics issues that were fake. They reviewed them and he got put back on. And so what we see is just, a bunch of kabuki theater going on in the Senate Intelligence Committee. But what we see going on in the Congress is a very serious probe by, a half a dozen, 8, 10 different Congress people who just will not let up and just keep demanding, as they have the chairmanship of these committees in the Congress at this point and in the Senate. But of course, the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr is as corrupt as he can possibly be. He was in on creating the dossier along with Mark Warner and the whole Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, and then all of their aides, as we know, Jim Wolf, Daniel Jones, on and on and on. So we want to salute Jim Jordan, not only because Jim Jordan is right on point with everything he is saying right now. It doesn't matter what the issue is. I don't know how he does this. I don't know where he gets his intelligence. But I'll tell you one thing. Listen to him. Because I have not heard him say anything that we didn't agree with and wasn't part of MAGA and had insight into MAGA.
I'm thinking that maybe, because he's from Ohio, maybe he's getting his intel from the Americans for Innovation.
Oh, yes. They do the deepest research and they create a timeline of indictable information, evidence that can be used against people that are in the shadow government. But as we work with them, we define who the shadow government is, the senior executive service members. Those are the people still creating obstruction for Trump. Those are the people that Jim Jordan is fighting against. And I have to also salute Jim Jordan's staff, and particularly Devin Nunes and the work that they're doing, and his staff, because what they're bringing out, these reports they're bringing out, are some of the only honest things that are being brought forth, because anything from the prior intelligence community was completely, it was false. I could use all kinds of different descriptors for it. So he is fighting against the deep state, as many people call it. We call it the shadow government. He's fighting against the corruption that led to the Mueller investigation. If you want to hear the truth of the timeline of what's going on, just listen to him when he tells the story, when the news asked him an open-ended question about these investigations that he is conducting and the investigations that are going on with Mueller and his corrupt gang, because Jim Jordan has the inside. And that's the thing. If you're going to be a senator or you're going to be a congressperson, this is the way that I have seen it work, even in my own state. I used to be an expert witness that it would go to the Capitol and on education. And I would go and I'd bring my documentation, and my statistics and all the proof. And then 10 other people would get up who didn't have any documents, nothing but sentiment, nothing but emotion, nothing but yelling at them, creating lies, creating complete fabrications for these Congress people to then make decisions on. That's what actually happens constantly. They're given false information. And who is the number one source of creating this information for them? Those would be, of course, the lobbyists, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which we think is a federal agency, which it's not. It's one of the most corrupt organizations that is giving the greatest amount of money to Congress and Senate.
Who thinks it's a federal agency? I don't think it's a federal agency.
Well, many people do, because they realize that the money coming from them goes straight to party leadership.
They're the biggest lobbyist group for big business there is in the country.
And they basically determine how the vote will go before the vote is taken. Because the party leadership tells the party what to vote. And then there's only a few outliers who you have to argue with. There's only a couple, people who aren't following the bipartisan line on voting. And so what do you really have there? You have simply manipulation, propaganda manipulation. And that's why the media is so important. That's why these lies against Jim Jordan that are being promoted by someone who has had, I forget how many different lawsuits that he currently has. As we have said many times before, if the Judge Leon, who is John Podesta's close friend, who still teaches a class with him at, I believe it's, I won't name the university, but they still teach a law class together. And Judge Leon is looking at the case of Fusion GPS being paid off by John Podesta. Oh, I wonder how that's going to go for John Podesta. I wonder if he'll get off that charge. Anyway, let's look at the standard operating procedure of Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie. They take millions of dollars. We hear it's $12 million, and they spread it around and pay people to tell lies. They put it in an undocumented, salacious, hidden document, and then they spread that all around without ever showing someone the document. And then lawsuits are brought. Remember that Trump just got off of a lawsuit with Roger Stone, the most absolutely ridiculous lawsuit I have ever heard in my life, that somehow a child committed suicide and the mother is suing Roger Stone and Trump because they talked with Guccifer in a text message, and somehow that made their son commit suicide. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But Roger Stone was, practically bankrupt by the lawsuits. That's what they do. Perkins Coie, they're lawyers. They don't care. They don't have to pay for lawyers. They are lawyers. So anyway, they take people to court.
It's called lawfare.
Yeah, lawfare, or I like to call it fake justice.
You've weaponized the law.
That's right. These lawyers are actually warriors. They're warlord lawyers. And Perkins Coie is the worst, one of the worst. They're not the worst. You could go over to WilmerHale, where Robert Mueller and his gang of Trump attackers, anti-Trumpers, have come to continue the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence operation against Trump, which is still going on, which is now a coup d'etat. It's an active coup d'etat right before our eyes. And is Perkins Coie, are they getting in any trouble for the election fraud? Well, they were the lawyers representing the DNC and Hillary Clinton, and therefore Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And so they knew that when they rigged the primaries, Perkins Coie was standing behind them, and they knew that the law was that the only person who could be held culpable for that is the head of the DNC. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down. The case was thrown out, and now it's back in. And so there's a case against her by the people who were ripped off, the Bernie people who were ripped off in the primary, and their money was taken and wasn't even given to Bernie. But anyway, we don't care about that. Perkins Coie manufactures false evidence. That is what they do. They pay people off to also simply make false statements. And so the number one person bringing this charge, a 28-year-old, I think, 28 years ago this happened, and supposedly some doctor, sexual charges, against this doctor, of a case 28 years old by a guy who's been in jail multiple times, has been currently has multiple lawsuits against people with big names that he thinks he can get money from, and another person. The two people named are both scammers. So why is this coming out now? Because Trump was basically saying that he really liked Jim Jordan and what he was saying, and now it's come out. It's given a chance for Trump to actually endorse him and say that he believes Jim Jordan is telling the truth. Well, basically that's also saying, I think Jim Jordan should take Paul Ryan's place. And that's what is really going on here. They can't let that happen. They being the Democrats and those Republicans who aren't really Republicans, or globalists, as Betsy likes to call them, which they are. Those are the people who want to stop Jim Jordan because he's way too honest and he's way too connected to MAGA, and he knows through whatever intelligence sources he's using, he knows the truth of what's going on every realm we've ever heard him address. So we completely endorse him. We pray for his cousin, his nephew who died in a car wreck. What a horrible thing. We could go into all kinds of aspects about that, how when people stand up against Democrats, particularly the Hillary machine, strangely there's car wrecks and there's plane wrecks everywhere. It's shocking. So anyway, what we're saying is Jim Jordan is innocent. He should be the next Speaker of the House, which puts him third in line to be the president. So
yes!
As you think about this, they can't let a person like that, the Democrats don't want a person like that to ever be in the line of succession to the White House. That would drive them crazy. They can handle Pence. They can't handle a Jim Jordan, because Jim Jordan is probably the most...
He's a wrestler, you know. Oh, he's going to take down those swamp monsters.
I think he has been doing a great job. He's out-wrestled every single one of them. Nobody can stand up against him. He goes on any news agency that will have him. The mainstream media won't have him because they're liars. They're putting this fraudulent character who's been in jail repeatedly up on the screen 3 times in one day, but not Jim. They won't actually talk to him.
Thomas, you know, I'm a Tallahassee girl. Have you ever seen anybody do any alligator wrestling?
I have.
It's pretty exciting. And you need a lot of strength. That's what I see Jim Jordan as. He's this mighty alligator wrestler. He's going in there and he's going to take down those swamp creatures.
Yeah, the alligator, you know, 2 things. You don't want the alligator to bite you, and you don't want the alligator tail to hit you. Well, he's got that tail under control, but they're trying to bite him right now. And so he's got to keep that mouth open. You know, he's got to break the jaw of the alligator practically if he's going to win this battle, and that's okay. The jaw of the alligator is the mainstream media, and they just, again, stepped on their toe by going with the wrong person. They went with Stormy Daniels instead of President Trump. Now they're going to go with this idiot accuser instead of Jim Jordan. I think you just got Jim Jordan elected.